Good morning, everyone, and thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us here for the CatDV Advanced Worker Node webinar. My name is Laura Genoway, and I'm the Marketing Manager over at JB&A, and I am here with the CEO of Squarebox, the makers of CatDV, Dave Clack, and Lee Phillips, who's the Product Manager for Squarebox and CatDV. And
Hello.
I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to them but I wanted to also, just mention that during the webinar, if you have questions, go ahead and type them into the chat window, and we will attempt to answer as many of them as they can at the end of the presentation. So now I'll turn it over to you, Dave and Lee. Thank you.
Perfect. Could you pass over screen control to us as well, please, Laura?
I sure will. Dave, do you want it over to you?
Yes, please.
All right.
Okay. Thank you for that introduction, Laura. Yes, and thank you everybody else for joining this webinar. So what we're going to do for the next hour is talk about CatDV Advanced Worker Techniques. So just by way of introduction, we think the CatDV Worker is an incredibly powerful tool. It provides an amazing ability to automate and to integrate with CatDV, and it's one of the best parts of the CatDV family of products. So, some examples of the kind of things you can do with the CatDV Worker: transcode, move, ingest, archive, deliver media, change metadata, understand complex media, MXF, red footage, and integrate with other systems. That's control other systems and be controlled by other systems. So it's an incredibly powerful tool in the CatDV family. This session is intended to help our resellers and customers to make the best use of the worker, and this is deliberately a very detailed, or fairly detailed session that builds on some of the material from our recent CatDV U courses and goes into a bit more detail. So before getting into the agenda and the main part of the presentation, we do want to point folks at the Squarebox website, where there are a growing number of CatDV tutorials. So we revamped our website earlier on in the year, and there's a growing list of, again, detailed information about how to use CatDV and the worker. And we're building on a lot of that content, in fact, in this presentation. And so there are pages on the website for many of the topics we're going to be talking about during the course of this evening, or this morning, depending on where we are. So, as an agenda, we're going to run through 6 example workflows that show some interesting things that can be done with the CatDV Worker, and then we're going to briefly touch on the CatDV command line interface and talk about controlling CatDV Worker from external systems. So the workflows that we're going to take a look at, number 1, background proxy generation, so being able to set metadata in CatDV and cause a transcode to happen. Number 2, looking at ingest and treating different file types differently as CatDV ingests them. Number 3, we're going to look at episode integration and using episode to do a transcode, and also talking a little bit about red cine and using that to be able to do transcodes but controlled by CatDV. Fourthly, we're going to look at a review, approve, and deliver workflow where changes to CatDV are going to trigger, in this case, an FTP, but it could be a move to a Spera or Dropbox or SFTP or any other delivery mechanism. We're using FTP as an example in that workflow. In the 5th example, we're going to be using some metadata from file paths. So if you've got some folder locations that have meaning to them, or some file names that have meaning to them, then we're going to show how the worker can extract that metadata and bring it into CatDV so that you can save time logging and you don't have to type things in again. The 6th thing is we're going to look at bringing in metadata automatically. So looking at bringing in XML sidecar files alongside movies and other footage and being able to extract that metadata and use it in CatDV in some creative ways. So that's the agenda that we're going to follow during the course of this session. So in terms of who's going to be doing which bits, then I'm going to hand over at various points during the agenda to Lee, and Lee's going to talk about some bits and then I'm going to talk about some of the others. Okay, so to get us started, there's a little bit of setup that we've done here. So we've got some watch folders set up, some input folders where we're going to be putting some media so we can see these worker actions happening live. And we've got some output folders, which are going to be the places where CatDV is going to be putting the files that we've been manipulating. We've also set up some user fields. In particular, there's one called Proxy Status, and that's going to be controlling our transcode in our first example. In our review and approval example, we've got some director and producer approval fields, which control that workflow. And then we've got another pile of metadata fields that are going to show the automatic ingest of that data. And clearly there's a details panel and a catalog with all that stuff in. So here's a typical screenshot of the kind of CatDV catalog that we're going to be looking at as we go through. You can see that we're working with a catalog up here called webinars, and we have a details panel set up called worker webinar. It's not a particularly elegant panel, but it's got a whole load of the information that we're going to be seeing. We're going to see so some names and media path, a few bits of information about proxy status, some information about folders and file paths that we're going to be extracting later, and some logging information that we're going to be using to pull in data using automated XML data extraction. So that's the setup we've done. A little bit of setup, but nothing that's too complicated. So I'm going to hand over to Lee, and Lee's going to talk through the first couple of workflows. And so at this point, I'll hand over to you, Lee.
Okay, thanks, Dave. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk you through the process that we've set the worker up to create proxies as a background task. So I'll quickly switch to CatDV, and this file here we're going to generate a proxy. So I've already got this set up in CatDV as a user field. So I'm using a user field that I've called Proxy Status, and it's got these values: create proxy, no proxy, and proxy created. And in the worker I can use this user field to trigger an action within the worker. So I'll just show you in the worker how we set that up. Go to Edit Config, open my watch action up, and on the trigger tab, as you can see, I've set it to serve a query, and this is the user field that I've set up called Proxy Status, and when the field matches create proxy, the worker will then continue to transcode the proxy. On the parameters tab, I've set it as a 20-second interval, so it will check the user field every sort of 20 seconds. I've got it to set to process online files only, because obviously we only want to create proxies of files that are actually online. And I've got allow polling set up, so that will repeatedly check the status of that field during the watch action. There's no pre-processing happening, so we're not actually analyzing any media. But on the conversions tab, what we've got is we've set up a proxy conversion setting. I'll just go into that very quickly. So we've got it to set up as a standalone movie. This is our destination where we're setting all our proxies to go to in the CatDV proxies folder, and we're also keeping the folder structure to a single level so that we can easily remap and repurpose the media path mapping for the proxies. I've also got it to set to overwrite, so if that proxy already exists, it'll overwrite if I need to, re-record it or rewrite the file. I'll just go to the movie format, which is a preset I've already created. I'll go into the conversion preset so that you can quickly see what we've got going on. Got a H.264, and it's ready for internet streaming. I've reduced the scale down to a reasonable proxy size, 678 by 576. But what we've also done is we've actually burnt in the word proxy on the file. You can also configure the worker to burn in any other field that you have available within CatDV if you choose to do so. So that's very good if you've got some kind of version controls and you want to add sort of version numbers onto the front of a video, because you can configure it to either be continuous or you can have it sort of flash up for a second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds at the start of the file. In this case, we're just going to burn proxy in. It's going to be reasonably sized and it's going to be at the bottom of the screen. So that's already pre-set up. Press OK to that. And then in the Publish tab, we're actually going to publish back to the same catalog and just update the same field to Proxy Created. So that will then tell everybody that that proxy is available and the Proxy tab will light up. So I'm going to go ahead and just start that process off. So I'll go back to CatDV, click my file that I'm going to do, and select Create Proxy, and then I need to publish the changes. So a Control S to publish that change back. So that's now being polled to the server. So the worker's looking at the server for this particular file and that particular status. So we'll just go back to the worker and you'll be able to see it'll pick up the worker action. There it is, it's picked it up. So it's going to take a while just to convert that. So it's basically burning that proxy file with the proxy name at the bottom of this, of the file. So this is a good way of basically being able to select which files you want to have proxies made. You don't, you can have an ingest system where you generate proxies of all the files, but there may be a case where you just want to selectively generate proxies for certain files, and with this workflow it allows you to do that. So just waiting for that to finish now. It's 40% through. You can double click on the action. You can see the tasks that are going through. If you click the details tab, it will tell this is effectively the coding it's using to create that proxy. Just waiting for that to come through. Another way of doing this is if you're generating web proxies as well, or you're doing a deliverable. So if something's approved, you can set up this action to generate a deliverable straight from the worker. So that's another way of using this workflow. So it's still converting. I'll just come out of that for a second. There we are, it's complete. So in order to see that change, I need to refresh the server. So server refresh window or F5, whichever's easier. There's the proxy, it's appeared. And as you can see, we've got the proxy burnt in at the bottom of the screen. Just mute that audio. So there's my proxy field created. And as you can see, it's updated the proxy status to Proxy Created. That's the end of that workflow. So I'll go on to the next one, so bear with me a second. So the next example, what we'll show you is how you can filter specific file types coming into CatDV. So in this example, we've got lots of different files. So on the left-hand side, you've got all different types of file that have been thrown into a folder. And what we want the worker to do is to sort those files into particular orders and create folders for each file type, and then ingest those into CatDV. So it's effectively organizing what could be potentially a random structure on your storage volume. And the way we do that is I'll show you the worker script we have for that. Here we are. So in this instance, it's, the trigger is a watch folder. So we have triggered by a file in this case, and this is our watch folder destination, just the ingest. We've got include subdirectories clicked just in case there are any hidden files within other folders. And this is where we sort of do the main work, is in the conditions tab. We've got this little regex command going on, which we'll go through, which is basically going through and searching up specific files that we want to bring in from that specific watch folder. And in order to do that, you have to obviously have the regex button ticked on the worker. If I just go back to the PowerPoint, I'll explain in a little bit more detail what that regex code's doing. So this is the code that we've inputted into the conversions tab. Basically, it's looking for any file and any number of times, and it's looking for specific files with a dot extension. And the files that we've instigated in that watch folder are the ones that are contained in the bracket. So in this instance, it's JPEG, PDF, WAV, and CR2 raw files. So regardless of what files are in that folder, it will only pull out those specific file formats and bring them into CatDV and generate the folder structure. There are many regex tutorials on the web. We recommend regex 1, which is a bit of an intro into regex. So if anyone's interested in taking up regex coding a bit more seriously, then please just have a quick look at that website. It's a very good introduction. So what I'm going to do now is just go back to the worker, and I will show you, this is the code. So that's all in there. So if I wanted to add a TIFF file in there, I could just type TIFF and it will bring that TIFF file in with it as well. So that's all set up. In the pre-processing tab, we want to move the files that we've selected out of that folder and bring them into our destination folder. And what we're doing there is we're creating a new folder called file types destination, and then we are creating a folder based on the file type that it's pulled out from that worker script. So $E is a variable you can use to create a folder for that extension name. So that will create a folder for PDF, WAV, or CR2. And then $F is another variable which will drop the file into that folder. In order for this to happen, you need to select on the rename move expand variables. There are various options that you can do in the worker, and in order to generate files or folders based on some variable, you need to expand variables option. We're not converting any files at this stage. We're just going to bring them straight into CatDV. And on the Publish tab, all we've done is we've added an extra user field called File Type, and all that's doing is indicating what the file type is, so $E, and we've set up a grouping field in CatDV that can pick up those particular file types and display them for easy reference for the operators of CatDV. So we're just going to run that now. So I'm just going to go to my watch folder. So this is my ingest folder. I'm going to drop, this is my folder with all these different mixed formats in. So I've got WAVs, WMVs, MP4s, .movs. We're going to just drop that whole folder, copy it straight into my ingest folder, and then the worker is going to automatically pick up the files that we've requested with that bit of regex code. So that's copying across now. Back to the worker. Just come out of that. And then the worker is looking for that particular folder. It's setting up the watch instructions. Give it a little while, it'll come in. These are the files that it's picked up. So as you can see, it's only picked up JPEGs, CR2s, and the WAV files that we specified. I think there's also a PDF in there as well. So they've all been ingested in. We can now go to CatDV, and obviously we need to resync with the server. So again, F5 to publish, to refresh the browser. And as you can see here, we've brought in just CR2, JPEG, and WAV files and PDFs into our catalog. And this is the publish user field that we had, which indicates what type of file it is. So in this case, it's PDF. If I click on JPEG, it's a JPEG or .wav. So it's a very easy way of seeing what the file type is. So that kind of demonstrates how you can use the worker to filter into CatDV. What I want to show you now is what it's done with the output files. So what we've done is we've created a folder called File Types Destination, and the worker has created specific folders for these file types. So it's a very good way of effectively ingesting a bunch of stuff from various places and then getting the worker to organize it for you so that it's easier to index and allocate for your productions. So I think that kind of wraps up the those two worker workflows. I'll hand over back to Dave.
Thanks, Lee. And actually, before talking about the third one, it's probably worth taking a bit of a step out to talk about worker variables. So Lee mentioned a couple of worker variables in that last workflow. $E was one of them, and it's probably worth just kind of stepping out and taking a quick look at those. So if I just head out to one of our workflows and click on the help button, then what we get is a big long list of all the different CatDV variables that can be used, and they range from things to do with the job name, task IDs, and then there's quite a lot to do with file manipulation. There's stuff about the file extension, the file name, the file path, and different parts of the file path that are enormously useful in this workflow that we've just seen, and in others as we go forward. It also CatDV variables also let you access the user fields in CatDV, and so again that's another powerful feature that we'll see in one of the later examples. Okay, so the third example we're going to take a look at is integration with episode. So in this case we're going to have a worker action that watches a folder, that does a transcode using the episode command line interface, and then moves the original file out to the SAN. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kick this off because it takes a little while to run. And so, excuse me, I'll get to our watch folder. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy a file into our episode watch folder. Here we go. That's just going to copy in. We'll leave that doing that. And so now the worker will pick up that job, and then it will use the episode command line to actually process and create us a mezzanine proxy. So we'll just see that kicking off and wait for it to appear in the worker. Okay, there it goes. And you can see the worker's saying executing command 1. So what it's doing is it's going off and it's executing a command that we'll go through in a moment. And if we head into episode itself, we can see that we've got a transcode going on. Here it is, and that's what the CatDV Worker has just kicked off. So let's talk a little bit about, while that's going through in episode, let's talk a little bit about how we set that up. So in CatDV, we have the ability to run third-party programs. So we saw earlier in the first demonstration that we could create a proxy using CatDV's own built-in transcoding engine. We can also kick off that transcode using a command line instead, and we'll see that in a second. So here's the example of the episode command line that we will take a look at in the worker in a moment. It looks a little bit daunting when you first take a look at it, but that's all down to the way the command line interfaces have been set up by Telestream in this case, or Red for the red one. But actually it breaks down into stuff that's pretty straightforward. So the episode command line starts off with calling the episode command line. It's called episode control. We're telling the episode command line to submit a workflow. We're telling it to use the input file that the CatDV worker's found and seen in that watch folder. And we're telling it to use a particular encoder. So this one's called CatDV mezzanine transcode. And that is something that is set up, in this case, in episode, this is set up within episode's user interface. And so we can see CatDV's mezzanine transcode going on here. And we can see, in this case, we've set it up as a really simple H.264 transcode. And what we've done, just to demonstrate that we are really doing a transcode, is we've put a big burn-in of timecode with a TCG identifier at the beginning. So we can see, let's go back to the PowerPoint and continue down. So we've told it to use that encoder. We've also told it where to put the file that it's encoded and how to name it. These are just conventions that are set by the API. And we've told the episode command line to wait, and then so that basically tells CatDV when it's finished. And so CatDV Worker, we saw, I think earlier, if we go back to episode, we saw that episode has completed that task, and it's reported as completed within CatDV's worker. We can now head on into CatDV itself, and we'll refresh our catalog, and we can see the BBC Motion Gallery. That was the clip we used. We can see, let me just turn off the audio for that one. We can see there's the original clip. We set up our proxy mappings as well, so we can see the proxy that we've just created, and you can see here's the time code. Let's turn that audio off as well. The timecode burn-in that we've just done. So CatDV has caused episode to do that transcode for us. Let's take a little bit of a look at how that's been achieved then. So we've looked at the command line interface and how that's used. We'll go into our worker action, and we can see we're truing that with a file being delivered, and it's being delivered into that folder, watch folder, that we saw earlier, and it's looking fairly frequently. For the purposes of this demo, it's looking every 10 seconds for that file to arrive. We're only going to be transcoding known media types, so we don't, if someone happens to drop a Word document into that folder, we don't try and kick off a transcode with episode with a Word document. That doesn't make any sense. So we're only doing it with transcodes with media types. We're not really doing anything in pre-processing, but on conversions, we can see that what we're doing is exactly that command line that we took a look at earlier. So here's exactly what we just looked at on the PowerPoint. And then after the execution of that command's been done, then we're going to move the original file and put that onto our equivalent of a SAN directory as well. Finally, we're publishing to the catalog. We just saw that arriving in CatDV, so you saw that in action. And that really goes through how we're using episode to do transcode within CatDV. Of course, this is just one of the examples of how you can use CatDV to control transcodes, and CatDV can work with a number of hardware and software transcoders. Let's move on to the next one, and we're not going to demonstrate the RED integration in the interest of time here today, but we have a RED integration. There's a tutorial for it on the website, which goes through how to transcode RED metaclits using the Redline application, which is an application produced by RED as part of their RED Cine toolkit. And it has a very similar kind of approach, really. So we have a command line start that calls the Redline command itself. We tell Redline to work with a particular input file, and here's one of the CatDV variables again. $I is the file path after pre-processing in CatDV. We tell it to use a particular output file. Another CatDV variable, $G, is the input file name excluding the path, so just the last part. We're writing out to this output folder. And then with the Redline tool, rather than setting stuff up in Red Cine, then you have other command line options that enable you to tell Red Cine and Redline what kind of a transcode you want it to do. So in this case, we've done a format code 11 is a QuickTime transcode. QT codec 10 is in this case a motion JPEG codec, and we're doing a resolution reduction by rendering out at 1/8 of the original size. So we're not going to demonstrate that one, but it's a very similar format in order to be able to transcode RED metaclips. Okay, so let's do a review, approve, deliver workflow. So this time we're going to be in CatDV, and we're going to use this same clip that we just created, BBC Motion Gallery. And you can see we've got two fields down here, director approved and producer approved. And what we're going to do, we're going to pretend that we are a director, and we're going to send for the next approval. So we click on Send for Next Approval and save that off to CatDV. And then we're going to head back over to the worker. And what the worker is going to do is pick up that we've made that change to the CatDV database. And then what it will do in this case is to FTP that file out to our FTP site. So in this case, we've got a little FTP site set up over here. And you can see that there's nothing, well, there's a pile of media, but that BBC Motion clip isn't in there. The worker's picked it up, here it is, and we can see that the FTP command is giving us some update information showing us the progress of that upload. So that upload's now been done. I can refresh the FTP site, and there you can see the BBC Motion Gallery clip that we just sent there has now arrived. Okay, so, and yeah, we're using FTP as an example. We recognize that some folks use FTP and some folks use a whole variety of different delivery mechanisms. One of the tools we're using actually that's worth talking about is the tool we're using, in fact, in this workflow is a tool called curl. And so curl is a powerful tool. It runs on Mac and Windows, and it's a command line tool that enables data to be transferred to other places. So it does FTP and SFTP extremely well. In this case, the command line that we'll look at in the worker action is going to be made up using these components. The curl command itself, we tell curl to do a transfer. We give it another CatDV variable, in this case the full file path, $B. We tell it where to put it, in this case an FTP site, a public part of our support website. And we give it, if necessary, a username and password with these kind of credentials. So let's take a look at that in the worker too. Okay, approve and deliver. So in this case, we've got a server query going on, and the server query is looking for that field that we changed, director approved, to change to send for next approval. Okay, we're not going to do anything. We're going to check every 20 seconds. We're not going to do anything else on the way through in terms of pre-processing. But then on our conversions tab, we've got the opportunity to use this a couple of these execute commands. And here's the curl command that we just talked about. There it is, curl -t. In this case, we have an anonymous part of the website, so part of the FTP site, so that folks can upload footage, as we just saw. And then after we've uploaded that footage to the FTP site, then we're moving the director approval on to say the director's approved it. And so it's been moved on and the director said it's good. And the producer has now been told that it's ready for review. And so we go back to CatDV and we refresh our window, then we can see that that's moved on. So the director has got their approval showing here with this radio button, and the producer approval showing ready for review. Now, clearly in the real world, you wouldn't have these kind of radio buttons showing what's ready for review and such like. You'd set up a smart filter so that the producer would only see those kind of clips that were ready for their review in the first place. Okay, so I think that covers that workflow. We've seen that one running. So then the fifth workflow we're going to take a look at is using metadata from file names and file paths. So we've got some user fields set up already, and we're going to have a worker action that watches a particular folder. It's going to ingest the media that arrives into that folder, and it's going to extract a load of metadata from the path and file name of that incoming media. And we're going to use part of that path information raw, so just part of the file name we'll just take and put into CatDV fields. And then we're going to use another piece of regex, which is this tool that can be used to extend the functionality of the worker, to substitute some codes into meaningful names inside CatDV. So let's take a quick look at what we're about to do. So let's move to our watch folders. Oops, excuse me. So in this folder here, we have some example media. We have got 3 levels of folder with a kind of a media type, a location, and what kind of media we're dealing with. And then the file names have some meaning as well. So in this case, we have something that says what's the content, in this kind of buildings or a submarine, and then something that indicates this is season 1, episode 3, scene 5 in this particular kind of MXF file. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy this media into our watch folder. There we go. And then our worker action is going to pick up that media, that media and metadata, and insert it into the CatDV database. So we let that copy happen. Go back to our worker and wait for it to kick off and then to start analyzing that media. Okay, there it goes. And while it's taking a look, then the fields that we're going to be filling in, we have folder 1, 2, 3, and 4 here, and file part 1, 2, 3, 4 down here as well. And these are the metadata fields that are going to be filled in by this worker action. So if we head back, okay, so the worker's completed, and we're going to head back and refresh our window, and we can see 2 new clips have arrived in CatDV. Here's our buildings one. And you can see what's happened is we populated the folder fields with some of those pieces of the path. So live action, London, entertainment, and motion graphics, Uganda, nature. Not particularly accurate representing the content, but it brought out the metadata accurately. And what you can see has also happened in the file path, rather than having BLDGS as an abbreviation for buildings, we've got the expansion building, season 1, and episode 3 as expansions to these other parts of the file name. And the same thing has happened here with the second clip, season 2 and episode 5 have come across. So let's take a little bit of a look in the worker at how that's been achieved. So we'll take a look at this worker action, extract meaning from path and file name. And we can see that we're watching that folder where we dropped the media a second ago. We're using any file type, we're doing nothing special on the pre-processing side, nothing on the conversion side, but on the publication side, then we've got some logic. So on the folder side, all we're doing is picking up some parts of the file name using some of these CatDV variables. So that's all pretty straightforward. If we go to our help file, we're using lowercase q, uppercase Q, and $R. So lowercase q is the parent folder name, uppercase Q is the grandparent folder name, and $R is the great-grandparent folder name. So that enables us to very quickly extract those bits of potentially useful metadata without folks having to type them in. And then for the expansions of the abbreviations in the file name, then we've used another piece of regex. And so regex substitutions are quite a useful thing in CatDV. So let's just take a little bit of a look at how to make those work. And the documentation, these are some URLs, the documentation is pretty good in terms of how to do this stuff. So the regex mechanism for doing a substitution is as follows. You have some data that you want to change, and you have some curly braces, and then you tell regex you want to do a substitution, and then you tell it what you want to find and what you want to replace it with. And then you just repeat that for the various things that you want to find and replace with. So in our example, we're picking up the third part of the file name. So here's a CatDV variable, $3, and $1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. These are parts of the file name that CatDV is extracting that have got punctuation between them. So that can be an underline, it can be a hyphen, it can be a space, and CatDV is automatically picking up that this file name has got 3 or 4 bits to it and is helping us by extracting those out. And in this case, we're looking at the third part, and we're going to replace EP1 with episode 1, EP2 with episode 2, and so on to be able to do that expansion. And so if we go back to our worker, we can see in this field we're doing an expansion of BLDGS to buildings, and then SUB to submarine, and you can see Here's the exact example we've just taken a look at, which is expanding our $3 variable, excuse me, our $2 variable, and expanding out SSN1 out into season 1, and etc., etc. So I think while regex can be a fairly complicated tool, even for software developers, then there are some very powerful things you can do with that in CatDV with a fairly simple language. Okay, so I think that's probably demonstrated the that part of the workflow. So let's move on to the next one. So I'll hand over to Lee to talk about this one, which is all about bringing in metadata automatically using XML files.
Okay, thanks, Dave. So what we're going to do in this example is use a sidecar file to populate an asset with preset metadata. So we're going to set up a watch folder, ingest into media into CatDV. It's automatically going to look for an XML sidecar file for that media, brings the metadata into CatDV and populates specific fields with that metadata. And also that we're then going to move the incoming file to a location based on the new metadata. So I'll just take you to the worker quickly. So got my watch action set up here. So the trigger tab is set to look for a sidecar watch file, watch folder on the sidecar folder. I've got a check interval of 10 seconds. Nothing to do with the conditions, only the fact that we're looking to bring in known media file types. But the pre-processing has got the checkbox look for metadata in XML files ticked, which will always look for named .xml files that match the media file. We're not doing any conversions, but what we are doing is we're setting a destination. So when the worker brings in that file, it will create a folder structure based on some of that metadata contained in the XML. I'll explain that in a little bit more detail. But here we're creating a program folder, and then we're taking some metadata from one of the fields within the XML to create the second part of the folder. And then we're publishing that back to CatDV. So I'll just quickly show you the file and the XML file. So let's just go back to this. So this is my XML file. So I've got, as you can see, I've got my media file, which is called sidecar example.mov, and then I've got a sidecar file named the same, and inside that XML is specific metadata that we want to bring into CatDV, things like director notes, nice shot, too fast, pan through, approval status, shot type, weather conditions. We've also got a program name already added to the XML called Life on Earth, and what we're doing in the destination part of the worker is we're pulling that metadata of Life on Earth out of the XML and adding it to the folder name. So we'll show you how that all works. So the first thing I need to do is to drag the media and the sidecar file into our watch folder. Just give me a second, I'll just find that. So this is our watch folder we've got set up. So I'll literally just select those and just copy, paste those in. So we've now dropping those into our watch folder. The worker will listen to that folder, bring in the file, and extract any metadata that's contained in that XML into the CatDV catalog. I'll just wait for the worker to kick in. So just give it a few seconds. There we are. So it's brought in the file, it's extracted the XML. If I now run to CatDV, and refresh the window, you'll see that file come in. It was called green shoot. And as you can see, it's already populated some of the user fields with the data that was contained in that XML. So, for instance, we've got the country France, we've got those comments coming from the XML, not approved, it's a medium long shot, and the weather conditions are rainy, and it's a static camera. So all that metadata comes in. What we've also done is, if you look at the media path, it's created the folder structure program Life on Earth. So it's extracted that metadata that was in the user 100 and added that to the folder path. So if we now go to our destination, you'll be able to see, give me a second, sorry. Destination file is here. So this is my destination file. It's added Life on Earth to the folder name, and then we've added some other metadata, year and month, based on some variables that we've added. And there's the sidecar file that we've dropped in. So that's how you can use sidecar files to pre-populate a lot of the metadata into CatDV. I'll hand over to Dave.
Very good, thank you. Okay, and this slide really just shows exactly what Lee's just been talking through. So it's an expansion of the that line we saw in the worker action earlier. Okay, so that really brings us to the close of the kind of 6 examples that we've got. We certainly hope those have been useful, and if there are other requests, then we are very happy to take them and to run follow-up sessions in the future. So either let us know as part of the questioning after at the end of this session, or let us know independently afterwards, and we'd be very happy to look at putting together other workflows, and we hope these ones have been interesting and useful to you guys. Before we hand over to questions, then we're going to take a little bit of a look at the CatDV command line interface, which is described at this location on our website. And the command line interface enables other programs to control CatDV. So, for example, we have an integration with Nexidia for dialogue search, a great product. And what those guys do is they write back markers and change data in CatDV, all using the worker command line interface. So the worker command line lets you query CatDV, find out stuff about clips, catalogs, groups. It lets you export data, XML, tab-separated text, comma-separated text, and it lets you change data in CatDV. So it really lets you remote control CatDV using this command line. So the CatDV command line, so I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail, but really just kind of give an impression of the kind of things that can be done with it. So first off, it's probably worth mentioning there are some pretty good help topics that are available both on the website and as part of the CatDV tool itself. The first one shows general help and examples. And the second one, there's a particular query language that's used as part of the CatDV command line. And the second one, CatDV -help query, defines how to use that. And then the help topic on fields, the help topic -help fields shows help on how to use the user fields within the CatDV worker command line. So just by way of a very quick demonstration, then so the CatDV command line, yeah, I've got that available. The kind of thing, so excuse me, so I'm going to run the CatDV help, and it's got some good little examples on here. And so let's take a look at one of the ones, in fact, we were looking at earlier. This one here, CatDV is going to do a search for any field containing the word sunshine, and it's going to print out some CatDV built-in fields, name, status, and ID, and it's also going to print out our user field. In this case, it's going to format it in XML. And so if we just get the CatDV command line to do that, we can see here's a piece of CatDV XML. I'm just printing it out to the terminal. Normally you print it out to a file, but just putting it out to the terminal window. We can see here's some pretty well-formed CatDV XML, or XML, with that clip in it. In fact, that clip appears twice in my catalogs with that data that we wanted to have. I can also, if I run the the help, then another example, I can return some information about my overall database and count everything that's in it. I've got a fairly small catalog here, only about 5,000 here on my laptop for demos. We can extract thumbnails, and we can delete things, so it can be quite dangerous too. Here's an interesting one. This one is going to do a query language. This is saying looking for everything where the status is not blank, and we're going to summarize by that status field. So if I just run that one, what we can see is that I've got 193 clips with an imported status, 4 with transcoded, and so we can pull out some kind of high-level reporting about the shape and size of the CatDV database. But really, because this is a command line, then the sky's the limit, and in terms of what people can do with it. And so I really wanted just to mention it as one of the key ingredients of the CatDV Worker. It's a really good tool for enabling integration between CatDV and other hardware or software applications. Okay, so I think that brings us to the end of our prepared material. But we are very interested in getting questions and answers. I know there's a fairly large number of people on the call today, which is great. So perhaps we can hand back over to Laura, and she can feed us through any questions, and hopefully we can provide good answers.
Okay, great. Hi, Dave. How are you? So let's see. The first question I'm seeing here: can Worker node create Avid media files? Also, how does it work with formats like P2 that require folder structures to define the file?
So Lee, do you want to take that one? So can we make Avid media files with CatDV Worker?
We can transcode using the go into edit, go into here. You can we can't transcode directly to Avid or pattern files, but we can read the files coming in and then push them through to episode and get them transcoded that way, and then bring them back into CatDV. So you know, the worker does handle complex media files. If I just go into pre-processing, give me a second. So I'm on a server query here. If I just go to watch folder, I should show you. You know, you can bring in XDCAM metaclip files or any metaclip file for that matter, and deal with it in any way. So you could send that off to episode to transcode, but we don't transcode directly to OPattern.
Okay. Can Worker node be automated to compress and upload completed videos to a cloud digital asset management that are tagged with certain keywords?
Yeah, sure. We know a lot of customers that use CatDV with a variety of cloud-based storage mechanisms. It depends on the interfaces to those systems. So we know a lot of folks use Aspera. If there was an FTP mechanism or secure FTP way of getting stuff to that cloud location, then absolutely yes, we can. So again, we do that using a server query. We'd look for a particular set of metadata in that server query, and then based on that be able to push it either using the curl mechanism or whatever interface though that third-party distribution service made available.
Okay, next question. Do the XML and media file have to arrive simultaneously, or will Worker wait for both files to arrive?
Oh, now that's a good question. So we do have some of our tech team on the line as well. I wonder whether so do we have Rolf or John on? So Rolf, so the other folks from CatDV, they're on the line. So we have John, who's one of our technical architects responsible for some of our biggest and best developments, and we also have Rolf, who as our CTO and founder of the company. So Rolf, could you perhaps take that one?
Yes, yeah, Rolf here. I assume you can hear me.
Yes.
Yeah. No, you'd have to take care then. I mean, you'd want the XML file to be there first, because if it's the media file that triggers it, because a media file doesn't necessarily have to have a sidecar file. So if the media file arrives and you haven't got the sidecar file yet, then it might be processed on its own. But one of the things the worker does do is if you're copying files and they take a long time, I mean, if you're uploading a file, could be gigabytes long, the worker's got protection. So while the file is still being written, you can put in a delay. So you can say, well, wait 5 minutes after the file's been copied before you start processing it, just to make sure that the sidecar file, to give that chance to arrive.
Cool. Thanks, Rolf.
Okay. When you use the command interface to transcode the file using episode, they're saying you skipped over how it ended up in the right spot, so CatDV found the proxy automatically. Is it set up to work no matter what your original file location is, or was it set up specifically to work?
Okay, so let's just look at that in a tiny bit more detail. It's a good point. So in the worker action itself, then we're watching that that watch folder. We were telling the transcode to write to a particular location. So we were writing out to our episode mezzanine folder. Excuse me, that's just moved over. But we're writing out the transcoded mezzanine footage to that mezzanine folder, and then we were moving the original footage to a folder called mySAN. So how that looks in the file system is, let's close that down. So we've got our, in this case it was the BBC Motion Gallery. Here's the transcoded one, which, if you remember, has the big time code on it, and here's the original. And so we have the episode mezzanine folder and the mySAN folder, and then we have the CatDV client has a set of file search path mappings that we've set up. And so in this case, we have got, let me see, is this the right one? Yeah, here we go. We have a file path that says, okay, for high-res media in this location, look for the proxies or the mezzanines in this location. So that's how we set up that to automatically pick up the proxies that we're creating.
Okay. Someone's asking if emails are generated during the approval process, so the director, for example, knows there's video waiting for approval.
No, so not currently. So if we take a look at the worker, we do have some email functionality that is kind of post-processing based. So if basically this was originally intended, I think, for administrators to be able to be notified if jobs were either successful or failing. It is something that we are contemplating, but in terms of adding additional functionality for. At the moment, these notifications are not really completely usable for notifications that things are ready. I mean, at the end of the day, you can create an email to a producer or director, say, when things get to them, and the issue would be, how do you represent that in the how do you represent the link to that media in the email that gets sent? It is something that we are actively looking at, I have to say.
Okay. In a review and approve setup, can you set up in a way that editors have a clip reviewed are notified with changes, like approved or changes needed? Okay, this is again via email. It's asking.
Yeah, but so what we would typically do. Yeah, so same sort of question. What we typically do for those kind of things is that we'd have some smart folders set up. So, in fact, here's one. Everything ready for review. That could have a query behind it that says, okay, everything ready for review for a producer, for an editor, for a director, or for whoever is looking at that kind of footage. And so that's how we typically show those things that are ready for review. And with our web client, we can set those smart folders up so they're pretty much the only thing that those kind of reviewers get to see, and they don't have to see the full power of the kind of full CatDV interface. They can see a much more cut down version.
Okay. Let's see, next question. When you were using regex to get info out of the file name, and in parentheses when sub equaled submarine, it saw that spaces or punctuation meant it was a new piece of information. Can it be set up so that only certain punctuation, like an underscore, for example, would be treated as new info? For example, burning London underscore, burning bridge underscore London could bring in burning bridge into one field and London into another.
Yeah, that's a good question. Rolf, do you want to take that one again?
Yes, sorry, I had my microphone muted. Yes, I mean, the $1, $2, $3, that's just a convenient shortcut because that's kind of a common thing you want to do with file names. So we automatically just sort of, by default, split up on any punctuation. But if you want finer control, then you can just write a regex on which processes the file name, so that you're explicitly pulling out using whatever delimiters or whatever pattern. I mean, maybe it's sort of like three letters and then 2 letters and then so there's no punctuation at all. So you can just write a regular expression that pulls out the parts you want. So the $3, $2, that's just a convenient shortcut.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And next to the last question, they're asking if can you convert image files, for example, JPEG to PNG, or can you only transcode video?
So the way that you do that is you'd find some way of using a command line tool to be able to do that.
Actually,
conversion.
can I jump in?
Yes, please do.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, I can't remember who it was, but someone told me that trick recently. If you use the QuickTime converter, so I mean, the worker node and CatDV have got a transcoding engine built in using the QuickTime engine. If you export an image sequence and you're exporting a still file with the image sequence exporter selected, then it will just transcode a single frame. So you can actually use that to convert, I don't know, a TIFF file to a JPEG or something, right from within the worker. It's not something I've tried, but I mean I did see them do it, so I'm pretty sure that works.
Okay. Great.
And in fact, I was just sort of chatting actually. I mean on the subject of sending email notifications. I mean it's perhaps a bit awkward, but I mean you could use the email notification on job completion to send a notification to the producer, say that a file has appeared. But you just have to be careful. You'd have to think in terms of where do you enter the email address of the producer? So perhaps if you had another user field which did that, or if you're going to write a complicated regular expression. So I mean, it would be possible to do. It's just a bit clunky at the moment, I suppose.
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds perfect. Well, thank you, everyone. And reach out to your JB&A team if you have any additional questions at sales@jbna.com or our phone number, 415-256-2800, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Perfect.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.